Don could have been called the favorite son of NHCA. He was perhaps perhaps the most passionate speaker on the topic of hearing conservation that any of us have had the opportunity to know. If you were here a few years ago in Texas, we had the great pleasure of Don coming to that meeting and speaking extemporaneously from the podium for a few minutes, extolling the virtues of our ability to hear, how important it is for our life. And I think many in the audience are probably having the same feeling that I am right now. So the reason for the Don Gasaway Lecture is that we want to bring people forward who have that same passion to talk about the marvelous aspect of our ability to hear the world around us, to connect with people, to experience the feelings that sound can create. Don's veto was voluminous. He talked about in excess of 10,000 platform hours of presentations. I had the great pleasure to work with him for about a decade at 3M and EAR, teaching workshops around the world, and I learned a lot from him, and we bantered back and forth. So the Don Gasaway Lecture is to honor a person, and there's many in the room today who've had this honor: Deanna Meinke, Lori Wells, Ted Madison, and others, Teresa Schultz, who have that passion as well, and to come forward and talk about how they have experienced the opportunity to share that with the world. And today we're going to hear from another person who I think is very well qualified to share that passion and vision with us. And Rochelle will tell you about it.
Thank you, Elliot. Our Gasaway Lecture today is a great embodiment of what I think Don Gasaway wanted to instill in all of us. Jérémie, Voix, now a professor at the École de Technologie Supérieure, started his journey in hearing conservation during his PhD, when his work and contributions ended up in what we know now as fit testing. So the reason why I am here today and why I am engaged with NHCA is because of Jérémie. He was actually my PhD supervisor, and he taught me the value of hearing and the importance of contributing to this field. I'm not going to steal away his thunder. He has lots of things to say, but it's my honor to welcome you, Jérémie, on stage and to go through this journey of your career with you.
Thank you very much, Elliot. Thank you very much, Rachel, for those words, this introduction. I'd like as well to thank the organizing committee for having me here. It's beautiful to be outside of Montreal, cold weather, and to be here. So why are we here today? Why NHCA? Why even hearing conservation? Well, my take on that is that it's because we miss something. And what we miss is this. It took human beings, Homo sapiens, 2 million years to grow eyelids that protects us against the brightest source of light on Earth, which happens to be the sun for most of us, unless you're flash welding or launching an A-bomb in nearby Los Alamos. So, when it comes to sound, unfortunately, we have a very limited protection means, natural. Staphyline reflex is the most famous one. And that probably protects us against the noise of thunders or volcanoes, as we heard yesterday from Kent, but we did not grow yet a neolid. So that's, a little bit my why. If you ask me what my why is, I would say, well, my why is the human ear. And like many of you, and you heard Elliot on that, I have this deep feeling that this is really our sense of hearing that matters the most for the human experience. And so the ear is really central to the human experience. And this is why I think that we develop technologies around the ear. And in the next 28 minutes, I'll be sharing with you a story, my story, and this is really how the research group that I lead, the Critias Research Chair, and our industrial partner, Sodomites and our peers, turn basically ideas into technologies, into products, and sometimes with commercial success, sometimes without. And I'll divide that story in 5 books. So book number 1 is about hearing protection. Second book would be about communication in noise. Number 3 is about the in-ear biosensing. So the idea is that the ear canal, human ear canal, is a very nice place to pick up a lot of biosignals. We'll see which ones. And then, unfortunately, today I won't have time to cover book number 4, which is about how we could use the human ear to actually stimulate the brain. And you can think of, obviously, sound, vibration, but believe it or not, you can stimulate as well through magnetic fields, through thermal, hot and cold, as well through light. So those are modalities that could be used and that have potential, I believe. And finally, the last chapter that we covered that I won't detail today is as well how we can create some energy from inside the ear. So think of powering a digital hearing aid or any in-ear device. Well, we tried that using, for example, the jaw joint movement. As soon as you're chewing, the ear canal distorts. If you place a piezoelectric material, you could generate some electricity. We proved that in many approaches and prototypes. You could as well use the heat. So this is warm, this is cooler. You can pump the energy, and this is something we are doing as we speak. I will have to comment on that. Let's start with book number 1, hearing protection. So today and during the last 3 days, we saw a lot of applications in those domains of protecting the ear, from passive hearing protection to the idea of doing fit testing, which is obviously a strong thing nowadays, and as well the ability to measure maybe the dose, noise dose at the eardrum level, so what we call in-ear dosimetry. People have mentioned that, you've seen booths with this idea. The idea to reproduce sound as well. We heard things about music on the workplace and so on, so it's important to be able to play things inside the ear with good quality, as well as filter maybe things to be heard by the workers, for example, so digital filtering is another approach. Other technologies that are developed, and you can as well use what is called autoacoustic emissions to, for example, monitor the fatigue that has been induced, the active noise control. So you can use the active noise control to control and attenuate further in the ear canal with cancellation of the sound waves. And you can as well monitor, for example, the auditory fatigue induced by some exposure using autoacoustic emissions. So that's many applications. I think most of them are covered during the last 3 days. But I'll start with
Chapter 1, Custom Hearing Protection.
So you just heard Nick Lapperle. Nick Lapperle was a young entrepreneur raised in a family of hearing aid dispensers, and he dreamed about a smart earplug. So he dreamed about that earplug to protect 30 million workers that are suffering from daily exposure to noise. And he dreamed as well maybe to make a couple bucks along the way. And the first time I met Nick, that was in 1999. You may see actually the timeline on the bottom of the screen that will guide us through the presentation. So the first and only question I would say that Nick had at the time was, well, Jérémie, we have the earplug ready. Can you make it smart? And so my confident answer was, oui, easy. And this actually became my PhD project. And for the next 6 years, I've been working part-time as Sodomites head scientist and part-time as a PhD student, working on the development of that smart earplug. So the original concept is described in this patent from 2000. And this is really the idea of an instant custom-molded earpiece. So you actually inflate inflatable earplug, right? Using a liquid silicone rubber. That's the one you see on the pump on the left. So this orange silicone will be flowing inside that earpiece that has a foil or membrane or bladder, call it how you want. And this envelope will inflate and then cure in 3 minutes, and then you have a solid earpiece which can last for 3 years. Actually, I have mine for more than 20 years. But that's how the process works. Just please keep in mind, notice the soundboard in green that we do have, that will be useful later on. So the concept was fine, but the manufacturing was a real challenge. So we never really had a version 0 working. It ballooned, at best. It did not really get any decent shape. But eventually, with much more work and money, we were able to have a functional V1 for NHEA 2002. So that was my first time at NHEA, launching that earplug that just got recently NR tested and properly labeled for sales in North America. And you can see how relieved we were to have an NR. So speaking of NR, we had obviously improvement over the years, and the earplug had several versions, and you can see on the graph below the overall attenuation that improves. And you all know by today that NR is really not really relevant, right? Except that going to those lab certification testing was actually a very relevant experience for me. That gave me, for example, the opportunity to meet Professor John Casali for a start.
Chapter 2, fit testing.
All right, so Elliot, you're right. You are the second very knowledgeable person I met on that journey as well. And, as I studied as a young PhD, designing that smart earplug, I realized that, well, this is cool to make a smart earplug that protects from noise, let the magic, useful signal get through, but what about the attenuation of those earplugs? And I realized there was no way to measure objectively in the field, the performance of those devices. So my simple idea was to reuse that soundbar, remember the channel I mentioned, and to insert simply a microphone that would pick up the sound inside, underneath the earplug, and outside in the ambient world. And so when you connect that system, that microphone doublet, to a computer that generates that broadband noise, well, you can then assess on an individual level the personal attention rating, so really the attention achieved by that worker on that day. So this Sono custom earplug and this Sonopass software are what we called the Sonopass solution. And the Sonopass solution slowly but surely started to get some traction. So by 2005, I think Sonomax had over 40 licenses worldwide that were distributing that solution. And obviously this started to get the attention of the major manufacturers of non-custom earplugs. So one day in early 2006, Lee Hager, a long-timer at NHEA and an employee at Sonomax at that time, came to me with a question. And the question was, well, Jérémie, can you make your system work for non-custom earplugs? And my answer was, oui, easy. And I said, yeah, you simply have to core drill an earplug, then you pull a soft tube through it, you push it back to the edge, then you have the connection flush, and then you connect this to this surrogate earplug to the microphone, and finally you let the worker use this, and here you have it, an objective measurement of non-custom earplugs attenuation. So my next logical step was simply to write a 2-pager document, and we sent Lee Hager to NHEA 2006 with this exact kit that you see here, saying, okay, good luck. And he actually eventually got the attention of aero people, and obviously Elliot Berger was a key in that aspect. And as Lee returned from NHEA, I was quickly tasked to find ways to manufacture that surrogate earplug, as we call that. And you can see here my very naive and rudimentary approaches at the time, trying to drill that earplug consistently. But what was really interesting is actually to look into the tube. So you may not have realized, but the tube that connects the microphone and the earplug has to be large enough in terms of opening so that the sound waves travel without attenuation. We call that the high frequency roll-off. We want to avoid that. At the same time, you need the wall thickness to be quite large in order to block the ambient noise and not pollute the measurement. But you need this overall tube to be very small in order to fit in that earplug, not alter the fit, not alter the performance. So we really came quickly specialized in tubes. And this was really when we worked together with Elliot intensively. So that gave me the opportunity to see test fixture that he had, where here we validate, for example, that there was no, we call that flanking path in the probe tube system, so you see the early prototypes. But we still had one question: how are we going to hold that microphone close to the ear when it needs to be placed? And for that I had an answer, obviously, and the answer was, well, let's use the sono braid. So if you don't know what the sono braid is, This is that device, so very elegant ear hook that you can be carrying around to hold the microphone near the pinna. And you know, I'm very thankful nowadays that Aero team came up with the idea of using safety glasses. I think that was a good call. Thank you for that. So anyway, in the fall 2006, we spent a lot of days, Elliot and I, back and forth, redesigning the Sonopass software. So the Sonopass software had to be co-branded, so that was to support both the fit of the Aero products at the time, as well as the Sonomax products. And so you can see here the mock-up of the screens we had. And what was really fun as well to do with Elliot was to look into the new metrics that were just recently developed at the NC Working Group 11, called the NRS, so Noise Reduction Statistics. And so we produced those first graphs, manually. And when I see them nowadays, this is obviously fun because they were really new for us the first time we drew them. So eventually the software got finalized, and this is how it looked at the time. And the Sonopass and EarFit were launched in October 2006. So next, I'd like to share a little historical video of that launch. And here I'll just do an infomercial disclaimer. So what you'll see is an 18 years old video, right? So the two companies that are mentioned are no longer in business operating under those names. One of the two products that is mentioned, the Custom Ear, has been quickly orphaned, and the other one, the EarFit, is completely rebranded and significantly improved since. But I thought it would be valuable for you from a historical perspective to understand what was said or stated at that time. And you'll have a break as well for 3 minutes for my strong French accent.
With the dangers of hearing loss and increase of hearing loss claims, employers, safety directors, and hearing conservation professionals are faced with a critical question. What level of protection are workers really receiving from a hearing protector? On the job, in the real world. Now, EAR has the answer, the EarFit validation system. Until now, estimated protection levels were obtained using different test methods and derating schemes, often with conflicting answers. The most popular performance indicator is the Noise Reduction Rating, NRR label, on a hearing protector's package. This number is based on a protector being perfectly fit in the ear canal by a professional under ideal conditions. Hardly the case in the real world, where as you see here, fit can be far from perfect, and conditions can be anything but ideal. Combine these factors with the unique shape of every person's ear canals, and it's easy to realize. Different people in different places are getting different protection levels. So who's getting protection, and how much are they getting? Well, now you can stop guessing and start knowing, because with the EarFit validation system, a technician can come on site and test, validate, and document the amount of protection each person is getting, quickly, simply, and accurately. Here's how the system works. EarFit's unique field microphone in real ear F-Meyer technology provides accurate, unbiased measurement. Keys to the system are a small dual-element microphone, advanced algorithm, and specially probed hearing protectors developed by EAR. Subjects fit their own test protector, just as they would on the job. Then the technician connects one microphone to the tube of the protector, leaving the other microphone exposed to the external sound field. When the technician activates the sound source, both the level inside and outside the ear are measured. It only takes 8 seconds to obtain data at 7 standard frequencies and ultimately validate a personal attenuation rating, or PAR, for each individual. That's only 8 seconds, and the critical protection question is answered. Then it's documented, with all PAR results being reviewed with the Hearing Conservation Program Administrator. These results are stored in a database and accessible for future reference. This information may be valuable for comparative purposes and in substantiating insurance claims. The EarFit validation system is test compatible with a variety of EAR hearing protectors, including the new Custom Ear, the only custom ear plug molded on site and ready to wear in minutes. Custom Ear is form-fit to the shape of each ear canal by filling the plug's bladder chamber with a silicone solution. Once the silicone mold is set, the plug's acoustic seal is validated using the EarFit system. Then, protection levels can be tailored to specific wearer needs by inserting calibrated filters. Custom Ear makes getting personalized protection, fit, and comfort easier than ever. The EarFit Validation System. Test, validate, and document. Now you can stop asking the question about hearing protection levels and start knowing the answers for every worker. With the EarFit Validation System, available exclusively from the leader in hearing conservation and protection, EAR.
All right, so in 2008, 3M eventually acquired Aero, EAR, and the product was completely recolored, so from orange to yellow, as you've seen here, and I think the rest is history. So obviously, my baby, my PhD baby was gone, our baby was gone, and we were facing a critical question. What are we going to do next? And well, the only answer I had at that time is that I knew what my next haircut would be. But that's about it.
Chapter 3, Sound Reproduction.
So fortunately, Nick, that's him again, had an idea. That's an idea he had tested the years before. And the idea was to use instant fit technology to have earphones ready in 3 minutes on the market, custom earphones. So remember, the first iPhone was released in 2007. So, you know, by this date, 2008, you were probably all about ripping your CDs and having them on your iPod and iPhone and so on. So that was really that era, and portable music was everywhere. So we repurposed Sono Custom and inserted that miniaturized loudspeaker you can see, and that became the sound cage. And the sound cage were actually launched through the Virgin mega stores in New York City. And there was a lot of fuzz, and the tagline was, well, get cage. And so a lot of celebrities actually got cage, you know, by Nick and other people these days. And here's, for example, one that I think is the inspiration for Nick's haircut nowadays. So unfortunately, going to the consumer world is really not easy, and especially not for a small company, small Canadian company. And you may not know that when you buy a consumer product, you know, $200, it has to be costing less than $10 for the manufacturer to produce. So obviously, with our technicians, our expensive speakers, and so on, we were not there. So we had to find ways to make the product cheaper, and basically to replace the technician. So remember, the technician was used and required for inflating that version 3 earplug, and we were really to develop another technology without any technician. So I would say that Michael and I were really under the gun. Well, Michael a little bit more than me, to design a device that would automate that inflation process. So here I'm recording the pressure, the volume, and the shape of the earplug that is produced by our traditional manual process. And then we found a way to replace that with an automated pump, mechanical pump, spring-loaded, everything. And we tested that, obviously, still on Michael. You can see he's full confidence in the system and happy to be there. And here, just to please Bill, I wanted as well to mention one trick that we used, and so I had to provide you with the equation, Bill. So, for 20 points, you can solve that. And this is a fluid dynamics problem. And so, by definition, a creeping flow is a viscous flow that whose curl of vorticity is 0, right, as you remember. And in practice, I remember from my classes, physics, that this was a constant pressure flow. So this is how we actually accomplished the version 4. So the version 4 was using that pressure trick. And I'll just show you here a little video on how the system worked and how the automated system was working. So basically that mechanical pump was in a headband, and the user would simply activate it. This liquid silicone rubber with the flow, inflate that membrane we mentioned, and the overflow would go back to the pump. And eventually, after 3 minutes, the system was cured, and that became a solid earpiece, custom model that you could use. So Sonomax returned to the market of custom hearing protectors. Unfortunately, the self-fit was not necessarily a great commercial success, I think, without a major distributor in place. But what was really interesting was that the first instant custom molded earphones were indeed released at that time. So they were providing, decent sound, excellent passive attenuation, and superior comfort. and a good retention. So that was really a technical success, but a commercial failure. So you have to acknowledge that at this price tag, people were a little bit reluctant to put this kind of money when you don't see a product that is branded Sony or Apple. And although we did get very famous reviews, and people were even complaining that the headphone design was not good looking. They confused, obviously, the injector one-time use with a real headphone. So anyway, let's open book number 2 and dig inside communication technologies. So hearing aids were a big thing as well.
Chapter 5, Hearing Aids.
And you just heard Michael, that's the famous Michael, that was tasked to create a modular design of a hearing aid. So it took a couple months and a lot of money to get from that conceptual view to a real product. So you see on the left the earpiece that will be inflated, the solid insert will be removed, you would snap in a digital hearing aid at that time, and you would get in a couple of minutes actually a digital hearing aid with a single mic but a very decent DSP in between. And that was to be launched for less than $500 through retail at Walmart. So you can imagine people walk in, an hour later they get their custom fit and their prescription hearing aid with the proper fitting for less than $500. So that was really something that provoked a huge reaction from the hearing aid manufacturers that simply asked our partner, the DSP manufacturer, to stop that endeavor, and the hearing aid was history. So I have to fast forward a little bit, and I'm now a full prof, and I left Sonomax in 2010 to become a prof at university, but I kept that progression with Sonomax that is nowadays called EARS.
Chapter 7, In-Ear Speech Capture.
And the product that was developed during the first years of the chair were recently, in 2007, put on the market by EARS as a communication product. So this is a digital communication system that gives you a level-dependent hearing protection device, an internal microphone that can be used to fit test, and a voice pickup. You can pick up the voice from underneath the earpiece and transmit it over radio. And so here you can see that worker that is in the purple team. You see that on the bottom in the middle. And the seal is not good, and he would be asked by the system to redo the fit test and then eventually pass that test. So this communication system got a good acceptance in Quebec. We have a lot of mines and industry where you have a lot of fumes and people are typically wearing face shield or face respirators. And so when we first tried that, their comments was, well, that's great. Not only are you protecting my hearing, I can communicate, but you're protecting my lungs. I don't have to lift my face mask to communicate with my colleagues. So that got the attention from major manufacturers, and the technology was licensed, a new product co-developed with 3M and launched commercially. And as EARS kept the commercial rights for non-occupational noises and non-occupational markets, I'll just be sharing one very recent development from last year, as you can see, which is that they were able to convert that product into a communication system for medical environments. So if you've been in MRI settings, you know that it can be quite loud, super hard to communicate with the patient, and there are a lot of treatments and procedures that could be enhanced if there was a better system in place. But you have to make the system completely non-ferromagnetic, and this is what EARS was able to do recently. So I'll be just presenting you a little demo where you see the ambient noise versus the in-ear microphone speech.
I'm going to start the video, and I'm going to play into the board.
Essentially, we can, with the MRI, we can do interventional procedures. The sequence is fast enough to do that. So, right now, hopefully everybody can hear me okay on the recording.
All right, so it's not even as loud as the real MRI. And let's go for book 3. So book 3, in-ear ear canal is a good place to pick up a lot of signals, as I told you. You can actually listen with that in-ear microphone to the heartbeat. You hear the heart beating, you hear the people breathing. You can as well monitor the temperature. We can record temperature, humidity. That has application, monitoring hypothermia, fever, fertility cycles for women. You can induce or measure the dynamic movement. So notice that usually the ears and the head are moving together. So this is quite useful. You can have inertial measurement units in the ear and detect some motion on the body and so on. You can as well have physiological sensing. So people are maybe familiar with skin conductance, galvanic conductivity, electrodermal activity monitoring. And we can record as well the distortion of the ear canal. It has been used to tell if I'm smiling or not behind my face mask. Just the muscle of the face will distort the ear canal. That can be recorded and expressed. So there are many applications. And the last one is that you can record EEG, electroencephalographic activity, or even electrocardiographic, ECOG information from inside the ear. So let's do a little demonstration that is a quick demonstration of a non-verbal event classification. So you hear me speeding up a little bit because I have warning here that I'm running in 3 minutes from the end of my talk. But we can pick up a lot of information, through all those non-verbal events. So let's see a demonstration by one of our students.
So here I am wearing the device which is connected to the ARP platform, and here it's classifying in real time what the microphone hears. So here I'm talking and it's classifying his voice. If I click my teeth, it was classifying as clicking of the teeth, clicking of the tongue, same thing. It can also classify coughing and blinking of the eyes forcefully, and closing of the eyes too. It can also classify saliva noise from inside the mouth. And that's it. So here I am wearing the device which is connected to the ARP platform, and here it's classifying in real time what the microphone hears. So here I'm talking and it's classifying his voice. If I click my teeth, it was classifying as clicking of the teeth, clicking of the tongue, same thing. It can also classify coughing and blinking of the eyes forcefully, and closing of the eyes too. It can also classify saliva noise from inside the mouth. And that's it.
Alright, so we heard how machine learning can do a lot of things and detect all those non-verbal activities, and that can be useful for remote monitoring. Think of an AI that is always on monitoring what you are, how you feel, and so on. Those are possible applications. Now, seeing a student present his project also means a lot for me because what really makes science are the human beings that are behind this. And so here you see the teams of Critias and Ears in an event in 2019. And just to mention that it's not obvious for academics and industrial to work together, but we're on very different timelines and deliverables and even budgets. Nevertheless, we believe, Nick and I, that we could find a working model. We call that the green machine. You'll see the reason why. We start with a J, myself in blue, Nick in yellow, and obviously we are 2 turbines. And we process things through channels. We funnel things. I do funnel ideas and bodies. And eventually those people that come in that academic setting get trained, they go from that experience. They often have that little paper that you see, we publish or perish. And then they move to the second turbine. They are joined by other elements that may be joining. So we have other talents that join the teams at Ears. They are screened, obviously, but then they go through a training that is more of a business-oriented and hands-on approach with the engineers at Ears. And eventually, they grow up as well from that experience. So remember, blue and yellow, that makes it green. So this is the green machine. This is how we transform all those, we call them talents, into really people that are working on developing products. This is the parcel you see, or the surprise, and obviously those surprises are licensed, and this is what EARS does very well. In occupational settings, in consumer and recreational world, in medical and biomedical, as you've seen, which creates some money to obviously keep the engine on and the turbines turning. So over those 12 years I've been prof, I've trained over 40 masters, PhD and postdoc students. So this is a little bit of a talent pipeline, we call that. You can see their project, their faces, their dates and where they are hired now. And speaking of employment, the first 3 graduate students I had, masters and PhD, were immediately poached by Apple, our good friends. And so we really had to do something to keep the brains in Montreal, in Canada. And so being able since to retain all those talents is really an achievement in itself. And if we look at the tail and the most recent graduate from that group, you should recognize the face here. And that face is indeed your president. And her work, it was the foundation of the communication system you've seen. So that was definitely something super interesting. And what's even more intriguing or interesting is that Rachel is now a full prof at ETS, and together we will continue to do research. So the idea is really to have something that protects you, enables communication in noise, enables biosensing. And my take is that we could put all this into an in-ear device. And that in-ear device, is not only diagnosing and testing and measuring, monitoring, it could even heal you through that active process I did not describe. So my short term for that is called the human ear pacifier. So keep watching. And I'll just conclude on one thing, which is, that this may sound a little bit sci-fi in 2024 to claim that, but if you look back in the days and look at that movie from 2013, does anyone remember that movie, Her? So this man is always on, with this in-ear device that answers email, writes responses, and so on. That was sci-fi in 2013. Nowadays, this is what any chat bot can do with large models. And so I think that this is important to realize that this is that was a dream 10 years ago, and that nowadays we have that worker, and his reality is not yet there. So my question is really, where will we be in 10 years from now, and how can we make things happen together a little bit faster? So this is not the end of the story, that's the end of the talk, but it's not the end of the story. And if you are interested to write the rest of the story, here's my contact information.
Nice.